Good evening, everybody. My name's Lisa Campbell. I'm the director of the Barry Center for the Arts, and we're thrilled that you're with us here this evening. I know you've had an enjoyable evening already if you just got to screen Professor Marta Bautis's film, A Condor in the Reeds, a really interesting piece of film. We're going to go ahead and get started with our conversation. If you have a question you'd like to ask her, we ask that you put that into the Q&A function of your Zoom, not the chat function, and I'll take your questions in a few minutes. So first of all, Marta, thank you so much for being here. And I'm even more appreciative that you let us screen your wonderful film this evening. Such an interesting conversation. And we're going to start out, and I'd like you to tell us just a little bit about the Mapuche people, and tell us how you heard about this story, about these amazing women, and why did you want to tell their story?
Yeah, well, the Mapuche people had been inhabited the south of Argentina, the so-called Patagonia and Chile, like for thousands and thousands of years. But what happened, as it happened with most indigenous people in so many parts of the world, Western civilization, they really tried to destroy them, and there was genocide among them, especially during the campaign in the 1900s and 1860, 1890. But the Mapuches were still there. And it's interesting because I come from Argentina. When I went to school, the teachers in grammar school in Buenos Aires, they said, no, there's no more indigenous people in Argentina. They killed them all. And then when I started getting to know them, it is full of indigenous people, and they have lands, and they have a beautiful culture. The way I heard about this story, when I said this story, it has to be told, as it happened with all stories that you need to tell. I was in Buenos Aires. I think I was doing research for a study abroad for Ramapo College at that time, some years ago. And I heard about this woman, somebody told me, that is in Patagonia, and she's by herself. She's an older woman on top of a mountain, and she's been resisting the Argentinian army for 50 years. And she's not moving, everybody left, and she's there by herself. And wow! And when I was little, I always wanted to go to Patagonia, to the Lake Nahuel Huapi. I said that in the film. So I said this story had to be told. So as it goes, you can start doing research, and I got in contact with Dario, who is the attorney for the family, the Mapuche family. He's like God for them, because he's the one who really helped them to organize so they could really resist legally, right? So then I got in touch with Dario, and Dario opened the doors of the Mapuche community for me, because I went with him, and with him we did like all the interviews first, and I said, how am I going to tell this story? Because this goes much further than the Villalongo Ranquehue community. This goes to all the Mapuche people, right? It's their story, not just one community, but everybody. And then so and so, it took me several years. I went back several times, and that's how the film came back. That's when the film came out, right? Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. So, you know, I had this question that you had filmed the movie in 2014, and what's happened since then. And actually, one of our guests, Claudia's asked the same question. Do you know if since the time you filmed it, if the fight towards the validation of their land has progressed? So talk to us about that.
Well, what happened, what happened is, unfortunately, there was a change in the government, and a neoliberal government came into power, and the struggle for the Mapuches is intensified tremendously. So after I left, if you saw the film, ends with a demonstration against the mining company and against the transnational companies. They wanted really, they're poisoning the land and stealing the land from the Mapuches. But with the neoliberal government, Macri, that was his name, for 4 years he was in power, only 4 years, but it was really, people were killed. It was a horrendous struggle. So now there was a change in the government again last year, and there was a government that defends more the interests of the everyday people, and things had calmed down a little bit. But the struggle for the land continues. And I think Marta Ranquehue, she tells us in the film, she said, we struggle so much, and life is a little better for the Villalongo Ranquehue community, but not for the Mapuche people, really. And especially in Chile, which is just you cross the Andes, you're in Chile, the struggle, there's a lot of people in jail, and there's a lot of attacks, and it's a lot of crimes amongst the Mapuche. Yeah. So the struggle continues, as it continues for so many indigenous communities nowadays.
Yeah, it's so true. You know, Native people seem to have a similar plight in Argentina as they do in other countries. You and I had talked about that before. What did you learn about these women and the people making the film?
These women were powerful, and the mother, she is powerful, and and when she talks, she was beautiful. She passed away, by the way, last year. Yeah, and the same Dario. So yes, it was very unfortunate because you never thought about Dario, but she was very powerful. And if you see in the film, the way she resisted and the way she attacks verbally the military in the time of the military dictatorship, like 30,000 people disappeared at that time. So she was powerful. Yeah. Now Marta is very interesting. Marta is her daughter, because she wasn't so involved in the struggles. And she told me, and it's so interesting how she described, she said, one time I was watching how they came in, and there was this very young man, and how he was talking to my mother in such like from the army, such a disrespectful way. And she said, all of a sudden, I felt something came over me. It was a transformation. And I attacked him. And in such a way that he looked at me and he was afraid. He became afraid of my power at that moment. And she said, all my family was bringing me, no, come on, because they have weapons. And every that, she became a leader of her community. A lonco, as they said. She became a leader, right? Wow. So that's it. And now she's organizing. And Laura, also, which is the younger one, she has a camera, and she's been videotaping some of the things, and she helped me videotape. And also now they're organizing their community, right? As I think I told you, Lisa, they're organizing like a farm for the whole community, and everybody can go and work there. And what's interesting, that this film, because of the circumstances, a lot of I didn't send it to so many international festivals. However, that film was seen all over, like the grassroots communities. And one time they told me, they said, it was seen all over Patagonia. Everybody, all the people in Patagonia has the film there just by word of
That's great.
And then it was shown also, which is very interesting, in Chile. I was invited by the Mapuches in Chile, which are very, very militant. And there was a film festival. So I went there. I didn't know what to expect. It was on top of a mountain, the film festival there, and it was just Mapuches, that's it, And I said, how they're going to receive it, because Argentina, Chile, I come from the outside. Well, they watched the film, it was a dirt floor, a straw, hut, it was big, it was beautiful. And they have a film workshop there. And when it was over, the lonco, the lonco from the community, he came. I said, I was very, and he came and he hugged me. And he said, how I wish I could go and visit this family in Argentina. Mm-hmm. So that was very emotional. Mm-hmm.
So you talked about the military, and that story plays out. I'm curious, in this country, of course, the military is under the control of the government. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you could help us to understand the connection between the army and the government in Argentina.
Well, there is a disconnection sometimes, right? At the time of, I told the film, they were the Institute of Indigenous Affairs, UNAI, and it's explained in the film, they are the ones who gave them the right to, they marked the land, and they gave them almost close to having the titles. But at the same time, the Argentine, UNAI is one branch of the army, of the government. But another branch of the army, the military, is still trying to enter their land. So it's this contradiction that happens in society sometimes, It happens here too, contradictions, one part of the society goes one way and the other one goes the other way, and let's see who has more power. And that depends on who has the more power at the time, Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think is so magnificent about this film in terms of the cinematography is the beautiful landscapes we get to see and this incredible relationship that these people have with the earth and the farming and what they do. Um, Tell us a little bit about that. Help us to understand the relationship that exists between the Mapuche people and nature and even the economy there.
Well, do you mean the economy for the Mapuches there?
Yes. Hmm.
Well, they have this beautiful, great, big garden, right? And that's what they get their most of vegetables. And then they have chickens, and they have and they used to have like much more, but the army sold them, over the years. But they have no pigs. They have goats. They have goats. But like for example, Marta's husband, he works outside and he brings money from the outside, right?
Okay.
Laura's husband, he works outside too, right? So they have this mixed economy for them. And then when I went there, Laura also they have like a co-op, and like one every Saturday they went to Bariloche, which is a very touristic community, and they have a co-op, and all the farmers went there and they sold their wares over there. But everything is organic, and those vegetables are incredible. And then this one scene in the film towards the end when Marta is there, and she brings out a potato, huge potato, and she said, "You see why I could never live somewhere else other than here? It's this love, this reverence for the land, this everything. Like every morning, Marta comes out and she makes her offers to the land, right? And she said, I cannot do this in a cement floor, right? I have to have the land, and it's very, and everything is sacred for them. Everything is sacred in that land, And as not only they, as the rest of the Mapuche communities, they have this reverence for the land, right? Mm-hmm.
So Ricky has asked a question here. First of all, she makes a comment about what a wonderful film it is. But she said, you use the concept cosmovision. Might you speak to what this means to you and in the context of the family?
Yeah, well, they have this vision of the world, right? Like this, the Pachamama is Mother Earth, and everything, all the spirit, the land is alive for them, right? So that means like they can talk to the plants. I mean, I don't know if they're going to answer or not, but they are in contact, in harmony with the plants, and that's the vision. Like everything is alive, everything is organic, right? And they ask permission to enter. When they go to a mountain, they have those trails, and they ask permission, right? And it's sort of basically that's the vision of the cosmos, the cosmovision. And I don't know if you saw in the film that like this adobe house that they make, the community center that's made of adobe, and it's beautiful the way they decorate it, and they have the image of the two snakes. And also this is interesting because the two snakes is like in Mexico, also the snakes, like they are entangled like that, and the two snakes, and one of the snakes represent the land and the other represent the oceans. So basically the cosmovisions, they have a vision of the cosmos in which everything is alive, everything is harmonic, and they live in harmony with the land. They don't believe, as like since the time of John Locke, right? Like the land, you have to control the land. No, they are part of the land, and that's their vision. Yeah.
So Stan has asked a question. He wants to know, were there individuals in the United States who attempted in any way to help these people with their quest?
Well, I'm sure there are individuals like the Mapuche people has solidarity for other people, but I'm not sure of any organization at this time that basically is working with them. Now, there used to be, like that's what I got to know with them in Buenos Aires, there used to be this woman who took students from other places to the Mapuche land, right? And if somebody's interested, and maybe we can, you should let, I guess, Lisa, and maybe we can go ahead and organize something, because they have a beautiful land, and it would be a beautiful, gorgeous trip, And then now that you said, I know of people that they went there and they organized a curanto. A curanto is what a curanto, you saw in the film, a curanto is where they make a big hole and they put like stones and they bury the stones. They bury the stone. Okay, I think. Oh no, okay. They bury the food and they cover with stones, and so it's very traditional. It's interesting because I saw that in Hawaii too, in the traditional Hawaiian, that they bury the meat, and I was there, and it's the most delicious meal. It's vegetable. It's not only meat; it's meat and vegetables. Tell you, it's the most. It takes like 5 hours. The most delicious meal I ever had in my life. So if the tourists go, like a group of students go, they will do a curanto, take them around, and Bariloche is like paradise. It's a beautiful. That's why the land is so valuable. That's why the army wanted the land, because it's very touristic. It's really, and it's I don't know if I answered your question. Did I?
Yeah. Susan has asked a question. She says, could you talk more about how they viewed themselves before they realized that they were Indian? It was interesting to see her talk about that.
Well, that is very interesting. And Sylvia, like the mother, she told a story, and she told us in such a funny way. She said, we didn't know that we were Indians. And when the lawyer told us, this land, you have to struggle for this land as Native Americans, right? In India. She said, what? We are not Indians. How does he there? Because he said they brainwash us so much that we were denying who we were, and that's very powerful. And so then she said, like we started like exploring, and I think Marta and somebody else, they started doing research, and they said, but how about the things that we do every day, and how about our food, and how about this, and how about that? And then they said, wow, we are indigenous people, we are. And it was like a discovery, and she was upset. Look what they did to us. They erased who we are, and unfortunately that happened to so many people all over the world, right? And not only Mapuches, but so many people, and not only indigenous people. They forget who they are and their culture and everything. So they became stronger when they realized who they were, and that's the important thing. And this is important for everybody. Once we get to know who we are, then we can do anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have another great question here, because I actually had this same thought. I'm always attuned to this with films, and I find it interesting because it sets the tone, and that is, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. I don't know if it's Kiara. I'm going to guess her name is Kiara. They want to know how you chose the music for the film. And I was also
oh my God, that brings me tears to my eyes, because I was working at that time. I have a small grant to work with Ottavio Brunetti, and he was a gorgeous, beautiful musician. He built the Milonga de la Desolación. That means the desolate milonga. He built it, he wrote it, and then we recorded it at another Argentinian friend, musician in Queens, Hector del Curto. He was a Grammy Awards and everything, and you should see these talented musicians. We recorded in a house, in an apartment. Can you imagine a Queens apartment? And he has his studio there, and he has like cloth all over the walls and all kinds of things all over the wall to record. Right? And the children were picking, and I was there, and they allowed me to stay there so I could record it, right? I have a recording I have a film of the recording, and I was looking, and when he started playing the bandoneon, I had tears in my eyes because it was so powerful. Now, the reason I'm so emotional is because Octavio was only 38 years old, and he had an infection in his he went camping and he got an infection, and they took him to the hospital eventually, and it was too late. And the whole community in New York City like we still cried, and we cry because he was such a talented musician, and that music is powerful. Milonga, Milonga de la Desolación. That's desolate milonga. That's how he composed it. Yeah, maybe one day I'm gonna just publish like the link to the way when we film it, and it was so powerful. I was like goose pimples that time.
Jim asks a question. He wants to know, he makes a comment, I agree, beautiful footage of the river, and he noticed that he didn't see fishermen. He wants to know what the name of the beautiful river is, and he's curious if they derive food from there as well, how much of their food source.
Well, it is, the river is not a river, it's a beautiful, gorgeous lake. It's called the lake, the Nahuel Huapi. The lake, what it has like, people can take boats and they go on excursions. As a matter of fact, I went on excursions. However, Mapuche people, indigenous people in the area, they don't bathe in the river. They fish probably, but they don't bathe because for them, river in the lake, because it's a sacred lake for them. So they have, again, they show reverence for the lake. So if you see somebody bathing, it's not an indigenous person, it's a tourist, really. And as a matter of fact, they have all kinds of legends about beings that inhabit in the lake and everything, you know, as part of many indigenous cultures, right? That they have all this myth and yeah. But it's incredibly beautiful. The waters is yeah.
Marta, I would love to just switch gears a little bit and talk about your work as an educator. And I'm specifically interested, how do you use your experience in this, wonderful career you have making films, and how do you use that in your teaching?
I use it all the time. It's part of who am I, because when for example, I teach directing the documentary, and I hope some of my students are here listening because I'm going to ask you about it. And basically, my experience, I produced about 13 feature films, and they were in national and international festival all over the world. But every time I go to a festival, I learn. Every time I make a film, I learn, and I'm able to transmit that to my students, right? I have other classes in which one about film representation, the one about the social documentary. And when I talk about in these classes, it's not only about what the books are saying, but about my experiences as being an active filmmaker for so many years, right? And maybe my website, I don't know if we can, it's Tiempo Azul. I don't know if we can put it in somewhere.
We can put that in the chat, sure.
In the chat, because my website, Tiempo Azul, like blue time, tiempoazul.org, it has like about 13 or 14 films, like about clips, from about 8 minutes to 10 minutes. But you can see the films, right? And then if you can, then maybe we can show them one day, right? Yeah.
There you go. Somebody just put it into the chat.
Okay, great.
That's great, Marta. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening and allowing us to share this film. And it's a delightful piece. If anybody has any final questions, I'd ask you to put those into the Q&A. And while I give the audience opportunity to do that, I want to talk about next week's film. I hope you can join us for next week, also on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. We'll be screening Days of Atonement by Professor Shalom Gorowitz with co-direction by Daryl Ruddy. If you are interested in that, please go to our website. It's the same process where you'll be able to register in advance, and then we'll send you the link about 30 minutes ahead of time for that film. That's Days of Atonement on the 16th of February at 7 p.m. by Professor Shalom Gorowitz. It doesn't look like any final questions come in, so I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you again. Thank you for allowing us to view this beautiful film and for being so generous with your time this evening. And thank you to our audience for joining us, and have a good evening, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you all. Yeah.